Hey viewers, welcome back to Ray Trades. Back on the Endurance camper. I just finished putting brand new springs and equalizer with wet bolts as well. So they've got grease fittings on them that you can actually lubricate the bolts themselves. Pretty cool setup made by Ride. But when I took apart the other side, from my last trip, I noticed that my brakes started out really good, and then as the trip went on, my brakes got weaker and weaker as I went. And what I noticed, other than the grinding that you're hearing right now, which is just literally just metal rubbing, well, you'll see what I mean. These right here, you shouldn't be able to do that. You should maybe get, when you go to give it a good spin, it should maybe go to about there and stop. So the brakes aren't adjusted properly, and that's what I went in to do originally, was just adjust the brakes from the backside. And I said, you know what, I've never seen the inside of these. Let me take these apart. So I'm really glad I did. And I'm going to show you a trick and then a startling revelation that I discovered with these grease fittings. Everybody just says, hey, just add grease right here to these fittings, right? I forgot to bring out a screwdriver to take these off. Stand by, I'll show you. So they say just pull off this cover, right? And you just grease that fitting and you're good to go, right? I'm going to show you why that's not so. That's not the case. So let's put this back on. Okay, looks like grease, right? So this cotter pin, make sure that you have a replacement cotter pin before you put these back together. Try not to reuse these cotter pins. They are really just a one-time use. In an emergency, I would say if you have to, go for it, but they are a one-time use. So, and all the cotter pin is there for is to keep this castle nut from turning. That's its whole purpose. Okay, cotter pin's out. Before you get too far, to get the feel for it, when you're tightening this nut up, this castle nut up, you'll notice that you just set a pair of channel locks on there, gently grab it, and then you're just bouncing it, right? And you'll feel that all of a sudden it just gets really snug. If you notice, it was really snug right there, and I've rotated the assembly to make sure the bearings are seated properly. It just gets really snug right about there. So I can't go any more with the channel locks. I mean, I could tighten probably, but I've already got there. So just back it up until the hole lines up for the cotter pin. So you're just going to snug it up just like that by hand. And you notice I'm choked way up on it. I'm not holding way out here and, you know, a bunch of leverage. It needs room to be able to heat up, expand, and everything else. So anyway, so get the feel for it before you take this thing apart. So anyway, that's what it's supposed to feel like. And when you take it apart, keep track of the order in which these come apart. So cotter pin came out first. Then the castle nut with the holes facing outwards. Then there's a washer back here, but if you tilt this a little bit, you can see that it allows for that washer to come out. Okay, and then beyond there is a bearing. That bearing has plenty of grease right here. It's completely dry right there, and that's the same thing I saw on the other side. This thing is in terrible condition, even though it was greased right there. So if you notice, this is red grease, this is the black grease, right? The reason I mentioned the colors is one of them was greased with a black grease gun. The other one was packed originally with the red. And on the other side, I actually had no black grease at all on that side, telling me that somebody worked on this side, added a little bit of grease to it, thinking that they had it covered, and let it go. Now, this is going to be very heavy. So when you take this apart, be ready. But it's very heavy. It should slide off, and there is a seal and a bearing on the inside. So tilt that out the way. This is the part that I wanted to show you. Number one, how this works is voltage is applied by these two wires. It gives power to this magnet right here. This magnet comes out and attaches or just magnetizes to this piece of metal right here. Okay, on the drum. When it does, the wheel is spinning, so it takes this magnet, grabs it out here, and it moves with the wheel. So as this is getting pulled that direction, you see this brake shoe? This brake shoe is pushing out. That's what's applying your brakes. And then the centrifugal force of this getting pulled out allows this shoe here to get pulled out as well. So that's how drums work, right? They pivot, and then the two shoes come out when they pivot, and then when the springs pull them back into place. But the important part I really wanted to show you guys is when I apply grease here, look where it's coming out. Comes out back here, right? So that's the rear bearing. What exactly is supposed to be lubricating the front bearing, right? I'm just pushing grease into the back bearing. Nothing is lubricating this front bearing here. On top of all that, since I'm in here, and I'm going to be greasing this back bearing with that, and then the front bearing I'm going to pack by hand. But I wanted to take apart this adjuster, because on the other side this adjuster was frozen up. So let me show you how that comes apart. By the way, all right, I know I'm taking a whole bunch of turns here. When you want to change your brake assembly, there's two wires here, and you cut those two wires. You literally will be just taking off those bolts right there. This whole assembly comes off, and a brand new one goes right on its place. So you get a brand new drum, you get a brand new shoes, springs, all hardware. Everything is brand new when you buy the entire assembly. And all you're doing is taking off the drum, set it on there, on those bolts, tighten those down, connect your two wires, put it back together, grease it up, and you're ready to go. To take this apart, you can use a pair of pliers if you need to. This is just a brake removal tool. There's a pin back here on the back. I'm going to stick my finger on the back side of that pin just to hold it in place. Just going to push in, turn a quarter turn, pops right off. Now there is a couple of springs up here. I'm only going to disassemble this one side because what I'm trying to do is get this out of here, okay? This adjuster wheel. The adjuster wheel is what actually makes your brakes adjust as these wear out. It pushes them further and further apart. Mine's not working. Mine's frozen up. I'm going to take apart this spring. I'll use a brake spring tool. There we go. All right. I'm going to take off that spring. Its tool's got a hole in the end of it. It fits on the end of that, and then it has a arm on here to pivot up and grab that spring and then pull it off of there. I'm going to let this brake shoe rest right here on the dirt for just a second. I'm going to pull off my star adjuster wheel. Okay, it sits on there just like that. This is supposed to turn freely. This one here is right now. The other side was frozen up pretty bad, but this maintenance needs to be done. Spin this way down. Okay. If you have caliper grease, this is where you would put it. If you don't, all you've got is just some synthetic grease or whatever, then just use what you can, but you want to lube this thing up. Okay. All right. And then of course grease attracts dust and dirt. So try to get that cleaned off of there. You want to lubricate the spots that aren't going to be hit with the dust and the dirt. And then the rest of it just clean off. Okay. It's as simple as that. So you can use anti-seize. It's probably preferred. Whatever reason, it's gotten a bad rap lately. And then there are spots back here that you would put a little bit of caliper grease on as well. And that's what this shoe, as it's pivoting, it's actually sliding against this. So you want to lubricate that as well. I already know I'm going to get hate mail on that part. For the longest time, that's what we used was anti-seize. So back when I was turning wrenches, we used anti-seize on spots like this, anti-seize on spots like this. A lot of people have gone away from it. I'm not sure all of the reasons why. It's literally just a thin coat. To allow it to slide. And actually, if anybody in the comments knows why we're not using anti-seize for that anymore. By the way, this isn't anti-seize. This is a synthetic grease. If anybody knows why we're not using it anymore, drop a comment down below. We used it for decades. Now the balancing act. I got this right about back where it was before. Seems to be pivoting pretty well. Remember the direction, by the way. For this one here, the star is on the back side. So it goes into this groove right down here. There's a groove on the bottom of the shoe. Drops in there. Now, I'm just going to take this other one and pull it apart and drop that groove right inside there. And then as you do, you can actually just lift up and pop it in place, kind of like that. Now I'm holding this pin on the back side. Just set it up there like that. Mash those together. Dropped in there like that. Oops. Gotta get that fixed. There we go. Goes like that. Push this spring back so that I have room for this one here to land. Grab your rake tool. Now I'm going to use this side here that has a hook on the end of it. Okay, watch your fingers because it'll jump off and it'll snap your fingers. But anyways, this has a hook on it. You have to balance it right there on that edge. It has a hook and it also has a groove. But anyway, just pop it on there just like that. Okay, just give it a good little twist along those lines because that's how your brakes actually work. When your shoe linings and everything else are worn out, consider it. Just consider, because in my mind it makes perfect sense. Just replace the whole thing. You get brand new hardware, you get brand new arms, you get brand new magnet, you get brand new wires, you get everything. If you've worn out your shoes, realistically it's time to change the rest of it. So it depends if you're trying to save a penny or not. Let me get this cleaned out. Knocking that rust scale off of there. if you wanted to change out that bearing, grease that bearing and seal. So I'm going to grease mine through here. But this right here is the seal that you would want to pull out. Once you pull that seal, it's time to replace it. That seal rides right here on this part. The bearing rides right here. Right now, it's way too loose. There is an adjuster. Let me show you real quick. That same adjuster that I just finished greasing. Let's pull this off so you guys can see it. The same adjuster that I just finished greasing. The spring here keeps that thing from rotating freely. There's a plug back here on the back side of the drum. I just pushed it out. On the back side of the drum, you should be able to stick a screwdriver or something inside there and grab those the teeth here, and you should be able to turn those. Okay. So if you notice, I'm just turning it a little bit at a time. And then when the wheel is on and I'm doing this from the back side, you see how it's expanding these two shoes? You keep trying the wheel, and when it finally starts dragging, that's when you've got it at the right adjustment. By the way, I have found these magnets, because what's happened before is they haven't been sitting right and they've worn out and stuff like that. I found these magnets at, I think it was AutoZone maybe. It wasn't terrible, but anyhow. So you need the wheel on here to be able to adjust it properly. That's what we're going to be adjusting. All right, like I mentioned, if you got a lot of dirt inside there, make sure that it's all cleaned out. If you don't, just add more grease. Either a bearing packer like this, or just get a handful of grease like this, and you just pack it in there. The idea is you're trying to get the grease inside those roller bearings, right? And it needs to be able to come out of these wheels. You'll see the grease start coming out of there as you're packing it in. Did it this way for a long time. And then technology evolved. And she should be able to drop on just like that. Change my gloves real fast. Washer goes next. And the castle nut with the holes facing out. Like I mentioned, you spin this while you're trying to tighten this thing, just to make sure that the bearing is seated properly. Okay, that's as tight as I can get it. If you notice that I'm covering up the hole right now, so we back off just a little bit. It's better to back it off than it is to add more. You know, like to overdo it, because you'll actually burn up your bearing. Add a fresh cotter pin. One's bent, one's straight down. Now remember I said I still need to grease the back bearing. So that when I grease the back bearing, I'll put this on there. Give this some pumps. I don't know, that's probably about 10 total, something like that, because it didn't have a whole lot of grease to begin with. If you overdo it, it will blow the grease out the back seal. So then just put my cap back on. Right, let's get that brake adjusted. Right. Hopefully y'all saw that. Put the plug back in. Looks like the camera stopped while I was doing that. Anyway, got the plug back in. The shoes are just starting to grab. I can see it, I can feel it. All greased up. Electric trailer brake maintenance for pretty much any trailer that has electric brakes. Don't rely just on this one grease fitting out here. It's gonna let you down. Like I said, it's not greasing what you think it's greasing. So hope y'all got something out of the video. Really appreciate you hanging out. I'm gonna go take care of this other one back here, and I'll catch you guys on the next video.